right, I think we will get started. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Cheryl Gruber, the middle school principal, and I am joined today by our esteemed middle school counselor, Miss Courtney Beck, and our wonderful education technology coordinator, Miss Heather McNeil-Roy. And we'll be talking about something very pertinent for middle school families: balance, distractions, multitasking, time management, all these great things. And so if you have any questions during the presentation, please just put them in the Q&A, use the Q&A function, and we will take them at the end. So welcome. So our agenda for today is we will be talking about adolescent development, define the challenges that some of you may be facing, different management strategies, how to create a family technology agreement, and again, Q&A at the end. And so why do we need to help middle school students develop self-management strategies? Well, I think that is fairly self-explanatory, assuming that you are middle school parents, and that's why you're watching this webinar. And if you're upper elementary student or parents who are waiting for middle school, you will quickly learn why we need self-management strategies, and I'm sure you're already starting to experience that. So for middle schoolers, really, we know that executive functioning skills, learning how to organize themselves, building that independence that we really talk about in middle school is so crucial as students are transitioning from having parents manage a lot of things for them in order to be able to then manage themselves. And so they need help, and that's why all of us are here to help support them.
So you're reading an article online when you get an instant message with a link to a funny photo, which of course you have to share. And now you're reading your Facebook news wall, which sends you to a video of a panda bear attacking a kid. And now you're reading Wikipedia to learn everything you can about the violent behavior of panda bears. And this is what 3 minutes on the internet can be like. We live like this all the time, and it has to have some kind of effect on us.
The net is making us more superficial as thinkers.
That is Nicholas Carr. He is the author of The Shallows: What the Internet is Doing to Our Brains. To understand this whole thing better, we need to go way back in time to say, like, the prehistoric age.
You wanted to know everything going on around you, because the more you knew about your surroundings, the less likely you were to get attacked by a predator. And there's even evidence that our brains release some dopamine, pleasure-producing neurotransmitter chemical, to reward us for seeking out and finding new information.
So getting distracted felt good and helped us stay alive. But the problem is that nowadays, predators aren't much of an issue, but we still have the same brains. And also, there's the internet, which is...
It's an incredibly information-rich environment that the net creates for us, and that's why we use it so much. I mean, sounds, pictures, words, text. And what this tends to do is promote a sort of compulsive behavior in which we're constantly checking our smartphone, constantly glancing at our email inbox. We're kind of living in this perpetual state of distraction and interruption.
Which is dangerous because
that mode of thinking crowds out the more contemplative, calmer modes of thinking.
And that focused, calm thinking is actually how we learn. It's a process called memory consolidation.
And that means the transfer of information from our short-term working memory to our long-term memory. And it's through moving information from your working memory to your long-term memory that you create connections between that information and everything else you know.
So you've got this awesome life-changing piece of information in your short-term memory, but then you hear that email ding and poof, there it goes. That email takes its place and you never get a chance to learn anything, all because of one distraction.
So attention is the key. And if we lose control of our attention or are constantly dividing our attention, then we don't really enjoy that consolidation process.
But I can hear it now. Someone out there is saying, what does learning matter if all the information in the world is just a Google search away? Well,
that is kind of shortchanging our intellects. If that's the way you're using your mind, just kind of searching very quickly and finding information and then forgetting it very quickly, you're never building knowledge. You're kind of thinking like a computer.
Which means that our very humanity is at stake. And it would be a shame if we all got assimilated because, well, humanity is pretty neat.
I really believe that if you look at the great monuments of culture, they come from people who are able to pay attention, who control their mind. That's what allows us to think in the highest terms, and think conceptually, think critically, think in some very creative ways.
And it's this kind of thinking that's at risk, being eroded one cute cat video at a time. Don't get us wrong, the internet is good for lots of things, and it should be celebrated. But the best thing we can do for our minds is to find some time every day to unplug, calm down, and focus on one thing at a time. Your email and those cats will be here when you get back.
Okay, so I'm sure many of us can relate to some degree to the many distractions that we face really on a minute-to-minute basis. I mean, just now I was making sure that my cell phone was off, my phone was off, I took my watch off, I turned my chat feature off. I turned all of these things off because I know that I will get distracted. So consider us as adults. You know, we have a fully developed brain. We have the tools, we have the strategies, and all of these things were established without the constant bombardment of information at the palm of our hands. So now if we consider our children whose brain is still developing and they're still learning things like how to effectively communicate, how to study, how to socialize. And so with that in mind, today we'll share the strategies that will help you in supporting your child to develop the skills and tools that will contribute to good study habits and that will ultimately lead to good life habits. So some of you may remember last year we gave a similar presentation. I think it was during second semester, but this year, and in thinking about where students are and just thinking about the course of the year, it's really important that you're equipped with this information and knowledge earlier so that you're in a better position to support your child. We just are starting Q2. You just had some conferences, and so hopefully you have some information in your hands, and that information really is power. And we hope to provide you with more information and more power that will help you support your student. So almost every time I give a presentation, I will speak to adolescent development. Why do I do that? We've heard it before, right? Well, yes, but it's important because we need to be reminded about who we're working with on a daily basis. And these kids are in a critical time. You know, they're not a toddler or a kid, and they're not yet an adult. Their bodies are going through all sorts of things. And so it's really important to recognize how we can support them. And when we look at the adolescent, we tend to look at 4 domains in which they're experiencing change and growth. And so that first domain that we tend to look at is the social domain. Peers are becoming more important. They're trying out different personas. So they might want to dye their hair, or they change their clothing. They're experiencing more extracurricular opportunities. And part of that is what we build into our middle school program by having them experience things with the arts and with music. And they're more socializing, particularly online in some cases. And I'm not just speaking to cell phones, because we know that not all of our students have cell phones. And so there are still a lot of ways that they're communicating online, whether it's via email or via chat or gaming devices. So there's a lot of different ways that they're communicating. We also look at the physical aspect of adolescence, and we know that they're going to need more sleep. Their internal clocks might be kind of changed around. They're going through puberty. So we are accustomed to talks when it's really hot out or after they've been to PE about deodorant. That's a different thing now, or something new that they're not used to. And so with the extra sleep thing, I do also want to say that with all of the extracurricular activities, how do they have enough time to do anything? I talk to students about having 4 and 5 after school activities, and they're not going to bed until later. Really start to reevaluate and reflect on what they're doing, because they still need time to be an adolescent. They need some downtime. They need to be sleeping. They need time with friends. And so part of that is kind of understanding a balance with the extracurriculars. So another domain that we look at is personal. So they're becoming more self-conscious. They might have some mood swings, and it's very different from that toddler mood swing of the tantrums. Now it can be sometimes passive aggressive or really screaming, or it's like, who is this person? I don't know this person anymore. But it's all part of what they're going through internally. They're very critical of themselves and others, and ultimately they really do want to please. They're going to want more privacy, and I think part of that is what we'll get into a little bit later. And they're starting to question not just parental authority, but adults. They're starting to ask why more. And then again, it's not just the why, and we'll leave it at that with your answer. They'll kind of keep pressing. So when you think in terms of academics, they're thinking more abstractly. They might have more homework or long-term projects, and they might be more forgetful or disorganized. So where they were a very organized students who got all their work completed in elementary school, you might start to see some things that you're like, I don't know this kid anymore. And so not only is it what's going on in the brain, but it's also all of the other distractions that they have going on. So they're going to have likely some difficulty with planning and prioritizing as well. So all of these things are connected to their ability, or sometimes their inability, to self-manage. And we can expect that they're going to make mistakes. We know that they're going to make mistakes, but I think the important piece is that they'll begin to learn from their mistakes. And we really do not expect middle schoolers to come in with perfect time management strategies and skills or self-regulation. That's what all of us adults, so not just the teachers and advisors, the counselors, but the parents too, we're supporting them with these self-management skills and the self-regulation. So, like I said, the things that we're seeing, we know to expect. They're all learning and growing at different rates. And so it's really important that we meet them where they're at, not where their friend's at, not where their sister or brother or sibling was at, but meet them where they're at in order to best meet their needs. So with all of these changes going on, how in the world can you support? And I think one of the important things is just by being available, being present. If your child is coming to you, do your best to stop what you're doing and listen. I know it's tempting to finish that email or finish that phone call or something like that, but really they just want your ear. And in adolescence, sometimes you just have a really short window where they actually do want your ear. And so really take the opportunity to listen. And it's not just about being physically present. It is about being attentive to their needs. You can also show interest. You might be completely annoyed or frustrated with them talking about Minecraft for the 10th day in a row, but really try to continue to show that you're interested in what their interests are. So as much as it might pain you, sit down and play the game with them, watch their favorite show or movie. And actually, I would really encourage that if they're telling you that they're watching something, sometimes it's not always appropriate for them. And so either going to Common Sense Media to kind of look at it together, ask them about it, talk to them about it, or sit and watch it with them. When you show that you're interested, kids really are more likely to open up. So the next thing, and I think as kids get older, it does become more difficult to have routines because of all the activities and friends and things that they're in. But the routines, that's what adolescents are craving. Kids in general crave routine. I crave routine, and I'm an adult. And so, those family dinners, bedtimes, kids already feel completely out of control. And so the routines really help them feel more in control because they're knowing what to expect. So even if it's 3 times a week, 2 times a week that you're going to dedicate having dinner at a certain time, everyone sit around the table, devices away. Don't let anything get in the way of those routines. And then you want to be inclusive and model the behavior you want from your child. I think there's nothing probably more frustrating for the kids than us, lecturing them and telling them what to do and what not to do. And then we as adults don't do that. We as adults don't do it ourselves. So, there's already so much happening to your kids. And so when you're discussing things like family agreements or rules or even outings, try to include your child in that discussion. In terms of the technology agreements that we'll get into a little bit later, this might be time for you to really reflect on your own use, and then you'll really be in a better place to model the behavior for your child. And finally, be patient. Man, it is hard. And I fully acknowledge that. I think we all fully acknowledge that. But try to take your deep breaths, and just know your child is going through a lot. And what seems like minor or non-issues to us, it really is a heavy, and it can be really heavy issues that really weigh on their shoulders. And so try to show patience and be gentle with your kids when they're going through things. So we can go ahead and change the slide. So before we get into the strategies, we do want to first acknowledge the challenges. Listen, we know this is not easy. I don't think there's any denying that. And sometimes it feels like things are working against you, like school needing a device and the internet. There are the social connections that we're saying that kids are more into now. And so how do I manage my kid interacting socially with, setting these boundaries or with not having a cell phone? And so it can feel like you're in too deep. And I just want to say regarding this, it does feel that way, but I think that you're always in a position to take a step back and to talk to your child about taking a step back, cutting or having those boundaries and limits. They might not thank you now, but they will thank you later. It might be a headache now, but really for the long run, we know that finding the right balance for your child is what really will help them become adults who are prepared for life beyond ASD. And we're not saying that they need to, find these strategies now, but it will contribute to those self-management strategies that will support their learning and growth for the life ahead. So it might feel like you just want to cut off the internet. Just cut it off. That will make it all easier. But that's not where we want to go here. We know that, for certain aspects, we do need the internet and we do need them to be connected for schoolwork and things like that. But I think this is where I was saying about the boundaries and the balance. Ms. Roy, did you want to say something?
I'm ready to jump into the next part. Sorry.
Yeah,
I think that our big challenge right now, again, is that we are so living such digital lives now, that our children live this digital life. And as we've moved through the pandemic, our students also have learned how to become social through their devices as well. And so we need to recognize now that balance between consuming content, social aspects, and creative aspects. And so we need to see now that all screen time is not necessarily equal, and looking at how we can think about what makes, what are they doing? What are the different ways they're using it? And how can I help them balance it in those different ways, and respecting that as well. So what do we need to do now? We really need to help empower our kids to identify their distractions. And one of the main things I'm going to be talking about in my part today is some of the technical ways that you can help them, but also non-technical ways as well. We're going to look at how we can develop some self-management strategies and why this is really important. We're going to recognize when there are issues, and also just a reminder about working with your child's teacher to be a partner in supporting your child. So first, let's talk a little bit about some of our management strategies. One of the first things to consider is about location. Where are your children using their devices? You may decide that when you're doing social things, it's okay for you to be studying in your bedroom or interacting in your bedroom. When you may decide when it's homework time, it's better that you're sitting at a desk to help you with your focus. One thing though that I feel is really important is that it should be okay as a parent at any point for me to walk in and say, hey, how's it going? What's going on? At no point should a child be sitting in their room with the lights off in the dark and have the door locked. It should always be that the choices that they're making online should be appropriate, and that I, as a parent, should be able to walk in and they shouldn't be worried about the choices that they're making. And if you've created that environment, that helps to develop that idea that there's still this social flow within your house and that your children aren't cutting themselves off from the rest of the family in order to be in the digital world. As well, it's important perhaps that in the evenings that you start moving stuff out of the bedroom so that the kids have that opportunity to shut down and disconnect and get ready to be able to go to sleep. Managing time is also a really tricky part. And if we're empowering our children, there's two ways that we need to help empower that. So part of them are going to be student managed things that we want them to be able to do. So deciding, how am I using my free time? How much free time do I get? When do I need to take a break? And also helping them recognize when they're multitasking. When are you doing two things at once that are distracting you from what you're being able to do? What are those things that are invading your space, that are preventing you from being able to concentrate when you need to concentrate? So using timers are one way to really help your child. Their computers all have timers in them. Their devices all have timers, but to say, listen, I want you to set a timer for 45 minutes to spend this amount of time, then set a break for yourself. And they will start to develop that strategy themselves and saying, you've got half an hour left to use it as you like, but set the timer. When we're done, we're done. And so helping them to develop that strategy themselves is a way to help, because I don't know if you've ever had this experience before where you've started to do something, you're doing some research or you're reading articles online and you realize that an hour has passed and you had no idea. So helping your child develop that awareness of time and time blocks is really important. So as a parent, you can help support your child by looking at time limits in the evenings and on weekends. How much time have you spent today? It's okay to be online from this time to this time, but then we need to disconnect from this time to this time, helping them again develop those routines. And bedtime is so important in middle school, setting those good sleep habits and helping them still be aware of when they need to go to bed. Making sure, again, that devices aren't in the room to invade that bedtime are things that parents really need to still help our children with. But by having those discussions with our kids about time limits and awareness of time and awareness of their environment are ways to help develop those important skills as they continue on through school. The other thing that's really important is helping them to manage their distractions. There are ways that you can turn off notifications on your computer. There are ways that you can make it so that things are not available for you while you're supposed to be doing other tasks. The computers now, especially if they're running the Big Sur operating system, has do not disturb. So that ability to turn off chats and things like that. So teaching them, how can I turn off the things that invade my space when I'm supposed to be concentrating, are again, really important social skills in this world to know how to do. The other thing is looking at other devices. So should a phone or an iPad be in the same space when they're meant to be doing homework? Helping them separate those distractions into other areas and locations. And let's talk about that a little bit more. So keeping it separate is one thing that can be very helpful. So you have a laptop for use at school. That is meant for learning. You want to do video games, you want to have adventure games. If possible in your house, have those available on a different device so that the computer is not the source of entertainment and learning. That's when things get mixed up and confused. But as much as possible, being able to have things on a different device also helps to separate. I'm learning now, right now, and I'm concentrating. Okay, my hour is up on this. I can take a break. I'm going to move over to a new device and be able to do these other fun things over here. If possible, keeping them separate is one strategy you might want to try. Family media agreements are another thing that you may want to look into for your family. And later on this, we will share some resources with you. Common Sense Media is an excellent resource for templates for developing a family media agreement. even without having a formal document, just talking about as a family, when do we use our devices? When do we agree we all won't use our devices? So for example, during meals, we agree during dinner, no one will have a device in front of them. Or we agree if we go out for dinner, we won't bring out a device. So these are things that you can agree on together as a family, and ways that to help put some guidelines again in place so that your child doesn't feel you're being unfair, that you can say, we've agreed on this together. We're all going to stick to this together, so that they're not feeling that you're changing the rules or things are different. Everyone knows up front what our expectations are. Parental controls. There are some tools out there that will allow you to control website access and shut down and a log of activity. And sometimes this can be very helpful in guiding your child. But there are some things I want you to think about, because this is parent imposed. And when we make a decision to impose from here, that's the parent taking control. This means that at times, sometimes these settings may not match what we need kids to be able to do at school. So for example, if you have shutdown times after a certain amount of time for access, it may prevent them from being able to do their schoolwork. Or we've had incidents where kids haven't been able to access websites that are, of course, for school use because of some settings or restrictions that parents have put in. Also, what this means is that if these imposed rules are put on the devices, the kids don't learn to identify what their issues are or learn how to set up their own strategies, because instead it's been imposed. And what happens is that kids then try and find ways to get around what's been put in place for them. When they've put in place things for themselves, then they're cheating themselves. But when parents have put something in place, they can often say, oh, I'm getting around the rules. So again, we want to develop that. It's a false sense of security. And when we send our kids off to high school or university, we want them to already have these self-management skills. You won't be able to run parental controls when they're away at university. And so we want to develop, as part of being a competent digital citizen, is being able to self-manage. And so middle school, that's one of our big goals. And so I guess really the big thing I want parents to come from this is just that understanding of developing that in empowerment. And we will share some practical resources with you, because obviously in this presentation, I can't go through everything with you, but we can share resources with you that you can use to help guide and investigate some strategies to use with your child.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to add, this is nowadays what a lot of the learning and the socializing looks like, as Ms. Roy has said. But we want our students to learn how they learn best, not to be dictated to or told how they learn best, because everybody's different, right? And so if you need support, just know that we are here to support you. And as Ms. Roy had mentioned, information will be sent out about some of these tools and strategies. But these are messages that we're sharing through advisory. If you do need additional support, truly talk to your teachers, your students' teachers, and have your student part of that conversation. You can talk to your counselor, your grade level counselor, Ms. Roy. And I think the important piece is that we're partnering together. You are not alone in this. And so if we partner together, it can really be effective.
And one thing too to keep in mind is sometimes your child will say, I have so much homework from this teacher, and that's why I'm on the computer for so long. That's when you reach out to the teacher and find out if this is the case, and the teacher can help back you up about how much they should be using on the computer and how much they don't need to be on the computer. So these are all ways that we can help to support you.
And even going into PowerSchool or Google Classroom with them, there's such a great benefit to being part of their learning journey. And it will help, kind of guide some questions that you might talk about around the dinner table. So.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. And I think you have both just answered the question that we have, just wondering the question, it was wondering what we do in school to support this, because we have that homeschool partnership message. And as Courtney and Heather were saying, we do support this through advisory and through all the classes. I think one thing too at school, as you know, we help to manage the distractions by not allowing students to use their cell phones during the school hours. We also know that students have them in their backpacks, and sometimes, they access them when they shouldn't, and we try to see them doing that. But we also know, for example, that WhatsApp has the platform on the laptop. And so there's just so many different ways for students to be connected. And just like you, it's hard for all of us to think about policing these things, which is why I think our consistent message throughout this presentation and what we do as well at school is helping students to understand how these tools can be, so wonderful, and also can be a distraction, and how to manage themselves, and then help to give them the guidance and the rules at school too, that we do enforce, that help them with that learning process. So I don't see any other questions here in the chat. We'll just wait a moment in case anybody else has any, but really do thank you.
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to comment too, in advisory, the theme has been self-awareness, and I think the timing of that, just with us being back to, full in-person learning, it's such an important skill to kind of be aware of and develop those strategies around self-awareness, and that will help. And so those are the messages that we're talking about in advisory and in classes as well. I know that in design and innovation, it's brought up. And so this is a message that we are sending, and helping the student learn how they learn, especially after coming off of the distance learning and no in-person learning and things like that. These are things that we're talking about and reinforcing in school.
All right, I do see one question in the chat. I know we had asked for the Q&A, but I see this here, asking about mood swings with children. Yes, that is absolutely something that happens with middle school children. And so that's a little bit beyond where we're talking right now with the technology issues, but I don't know, Ms. Beck, if you want to just speak for a moment about mood swings with our adolescents and how that also does play into their role with technology.
Yeah, and I wish I had a one size fits all answer for that. Kids will have their mood swings, and I understand the frustration. And I think it would be really easy for me to sit here and say, do this and do that and do this. I'm not in your home. And so I think, I had mentioned it before, but I think patience, walking away when you need to, and you can voice that. You say, you know what? I need to step away. I need to take a break. Let's come back together when we're both in a position or when we're both more calm and can talk about this together. You can always kind of set the boundary if they're talking to you in an inappropriate way. You can say, again, I'm going to take a step back. The language that you're using isn't the language that we use in this home. Or the tone that you're using isn't the language or the tone that we use in this home. And so I'm going to take a step back and come back together when we're both in a better place to talk about this. So yeah, I mean, I would say, like I said, I don't have a one size fits all answer, but I think patience and noticing within yourself when you're kind of reaching that red zone. Because when you're both in the red zone, it's going to be really ineffective and you're not going to get through to them. And they're probably not getting through to you what they need. And so talking, kind of reconnecting once everybody's in a better place, I think that is the most helpful, and just communicating along the way.
We had a parent asking about the wait until 8th idea of not having students have cell phones until grade 8. And I know that is something that the school has shared resources about in the past, and some families really are trying at home. And it can be difficult because so many of our students do have cell phones, and that really is a family decision. And it's something that we absolutely support in school. It is not something we can mandate because people do have the freedom to choose what their child is doing as far as cell phones and technology, but we certainly support that. anytime students especially are not bringing their phones to school, I think that that's something that can be very helpful for us as well, and for the students to learn when that tool is appropriate to be used. Sometimes students might have phones, but they don't bring them to campus. And so maybe they can use them at home or on the weekend. We always allow students to use the office phone when they need to for calling home, if that's needed during the school day. So there are ways also to kind of scaffold. That's a word that we like to use in education, the use of a cell phone. But I don't know, Heather or Courtney, if you wanted to talk at all about the wait until 8th idea.
I think that that was certainly an initiative that's available for parents to consider. And one thing that I like to encourage as well is the idea of graduated privileges. The idea that you start with very basic access to a phone, and slowly, as your child demonstrates responsibility, allow access to different tools and extended time and so forth, and working your way up to when they may be responsible enough for grade 8. And I think the reason they use the grade 8 term is because many social media tools are available to students at 13 plus. And so that's perhaps where the 8th grade comes from, but certainly working your way to having privileges rather than a sudden giving a phone on 8th grade might be something to think about as well.
Yes. And really, I mean, those conversations, they have to start really early. By the time kids are getting into middle school, I mean, some kids already have cell phones before they even reach middle school. And, you know, the idea behind Wait Until 8th, that really is a parent driven kind of initiative. And the reason for that is because you guys are at the forefront. And so when parents band together and say, no, we're going to stand strong and we're going to support this, that makes it a little bit easier, because then their peers aren't getting the cell phones, right? So yeah, I mean, you know, like Ms. Roy said, the graduated privileges, and I understand the social pressure and things like that. But truly, there are so many ways now that kids can communicate. And I know that doesn't take the pain away from not having, you know, that social media account or having the easy access to a device. But we really are finding so much benefit to students not having a cell phone because of all the social challenges, the personal challenges it can cause, and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think we're also, that ties into social media too. So I think we have to look that there's two issues between the device and having an account to social media, which is another conversation.
And there will be another conversation, and that is another question we have too. Mr. Willie will be doing a follow-up webinar on this in the beginning of second semester, exactly addressing that. So this was more focused on how to manage the distractions and the device and the parental agreements at home. And then the next webinar that we have will be addressing more about the social interactions online and help to guide students through that. So thank you so much, everyone, for participating today. And we look forward to seeing you at our next webinars. Thank you.